publications, when you look specifically at how people comment on them, a lot of people talk about their unwavering self-belief. We've talked about this on the show before, but Sam Altman has been quoted as saying that one of the biggest things that struck him when he first met Elon Musk was his level of confidence. It's contagious.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, we covered him a couple weeks ago. He was so confident in his opinion. Not only was he able to bend the will of his parents at an early age, he was so confident that people coined his effect on the people around him as a reality distortion field.
Yeah.
And so there's a real power in belief and being able to understand how it works and being able to use that in your business and the way that you conduct yourself.
And that match with a religious work ethic,
Yeah.
That'll take you places. We are back.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Founders Drive.
It's been another week.
Yeah.
2026.
Yes. So why don't we? Well, how was Constance this week? We had a pretty busy week again.
Dude,
back to back, baby.
I feel like we are keeping the momentum going. We've got another big deployment going out, just with some changes to some bugs that we found, big style updates with these dark mode refactors, and then also. I really like the landing page updates with like the previews and stuff. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but
no, that was cool. It's like we're just basically keeping our foot down this whole 2026. Every week, baby.
That's right.
Foot down, pedal down, let's go. But yeah, we did our whole style system. We refactored our whole style system, and a large part of it was. And this is for like the technical minded folks, but a large part of it was to really take advantage of the artificial intelligence and the agent capabilities and making sure that we're not leaving anything on the table there. So one thing that we've learned is that even with the tools and technology today, it's still really important to understand what you're doing, because that's really where the separation comes from, is being able to apply what you know, so that way you could actually use the tools to the greatest capacity. And so just taking stuff that we knew about, like organizing, setting up a project,
managing context
specifically with like the style stuff, that was like really cool to put that into use, because it takes our knowledge and it meets that with the latest tools. So that was kind of on the back end, but I think you'll see that show in the product in terms of how uniform things are. There's going to be less holes, less leaks, and we'll be able to move faster and deliver value faster, which is the main thing and the main reason behind doing that. Yeah. But also landing page, that got its new update.
Yeah.
There was stuff throughout the whole application, some stuff that you were addressed in terms of like big bugs that were kind of dormant, but I think are going to play a larger role now that we're seeing more growth and more activity on the platform.
Yeah, it's good. I don't mind working on this stuff, where I feel like in a corporate space it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, you never really get to that. They're like, tech that. No, we'll just do that another time. Another time never comes.
But it's also not as like energizing. Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like it's just not as energizing in the corporate space versus like when you're doing it, for your own kind of project. But
but in terms of features, again, the whole thing is mostly around getting yourself a mini website. So for people that aren't even aware of what Constance is, Constance is a site where people can spin up a mini website really quick, within 5 minutes or less. And then that's not seen as the end destination. From there, we make it really easy to publish content, but then also monetize your content. And that's becoming increasingly more and more important in this new age that we're living in, where technology and specifically AI is causing a lot of disruption. We want to calm all of that down and provide a path for people to provide for themselves and follow their passions. So check out Constance, and
you know where to go.
Yeah, you know where to go.
It'll be in the description. We're really excited about this, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the market that we'll definitely get into, not only in this episode, but in the super secret episode that'll be tagged below as well on Constance.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I feel like it's just like a good way to give people certainty in these very uncertain times with AI.
Cool. So, why don't we jump into the founder of today?
Yes.
Who's that?
John D. Rockefeller.
Not to be confused with Rockefeller Records.
I don't think you could confuse the two, but maybe.
This is the Rockefeller, the original, the main guy who was until recently the wealthiest man in American history.
Right. First ever billionaire.
Yeah. And even when you convert his net worth, it was
he's in the 1800s.
Astronomical, right?
Yeah, he was in the 1800s, so like $1 billion then, much more than $1 billion today.
Well, it's about like I think it converted to about $400 billion. Oh
my god,
$400 to $500 billion, and so Elon Musk most recently surpassed that,
right?
And I think
480 or something like that.
I think he'll dwarf that as well,
especially with that $1 trillion pay package.
Well, yeah, and some of the things that have been some of the companies that are still private and haven't had that valuation, that the public, I think, will more than push it beyond anything that we've seen in history. But Rockefeller was one of the original entrepreneurs. He did it in such a short time span too.
Yeah.
And he walked off into the sunset in his 50s.
In his lifetime, essentially.
Exactly. So, but his story starts in the 1800s. Starts 1839. I think July 8th is when he was born. He was born
somewhere in there.
Yeah, and he was born kind of in like farmland.
Not a very wealthy family.
Yeah, not a very wealthy family. His father was a snake oil salesman, to say the least.
I mean, literally.
Yeah,
quite literally
sold snake oil. But his mother was a very devout religious woman, and she really shaped a lot of his character, shaped who he was. And
I think both parents had a very important role. Okay. His mother, from like the very like discipline, I can see that. But then there's also quotes from his father that are like, yeah, I like to cheat my boys whenever I can, so that they grow up to be strong men. It's like, you don't cheat your family. You don't like, he would, routinely skip town for months at a time, leaving them with nothing, and just kind of, because he's really evading the police, going from town to town selling snake oil, because he doesn't actually work. So I think I could see both kind of playing a huge role in like not trusting anybody and like really going and getting it yourself, but then also that discipline and that work ethic. Okay, so you're going from like the angle of he learned how to deal with a con artist. Essentially, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so it's like you can't really, if I can understand how to deal with a con artist, then there's not many people that I'm going to be able to talk to, or that I'm going to talk to and not be able to get a quick judge of their character and what they're capable of. I think it's also important to realize at a very young age, around 12, right, like the world has con people in it. I think when I was 12, maybe that was like a realization I had to come to myself, because it wasn't part of my, daily life or family life, that there was just like cons happening. Yeah. I mean, maybe there were, I just wasn't aware of it. And so I think that's also like really pivotal when you start, the world isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There are con people here. Yeah. So when he a big part of it, I will say, that came up in my research and when I was digging around, is that he had a ridiculous amount of self-belief. And I think that that's largely when you're around people that are con artists, you can see how far just pure confidence, pure belief can take you. Right. A lot of people just associate con artists with trickery, but the real areas that they're dealing with and that they're dealing in is their art is confidence. Right. They're really good at portraying confidence, but they're also very good at putting confidence in other people. Which is also a really common trait in a lot of successful founders. Right. And we've seen that in so many people. When you look at Larry Ellison, when you look at Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, when you look at a lot of people throughout, Zuckerberg. They like rally people together, Well, even outside of just looking at their actions, when you look specifically at how people comment on them, a lot of people talk about their unwavering self-belief. We've talked about this on the show before, but Sam Altman has been quoted as saying that
one of the biggest things that struck him when he first met Elon Musk was his level of confidence. It's contagious.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, we covered him a couple weeks ago. He was so confident in his opinion. Not only was he able to bend the will of his parents at an early age, he was so confident that people coined his effect on the people around him as a reality distortion field.
Yeah.
And so there's a real power in belief and being able to understand how it works and being able to use that in your business and the way that you conduct yourself.
And that match with a religious work ethic,
yeah,
that'll take you places.
So
I know his mom had.
So that's a really interesting insight, looking at the confidence and the misdoings or misleadings of his father and his mother, who's also very religious. I think that's a big thing too in the Christian faith. Belief and confidence is just a through line of the whole thing. And so seeing it in the good religious route, and then also in the more nefarious dealings, probably had a very big impact on his psyche and the way that he conducted himself.
It's a balancing act too, because you can't you fall one step out of line there, and you're either too far, in each camp. Yeah, it's very interesting. I know at a very early age, he got a job in Ohio doing some bookkeeping.
Well, his dad actually, dropped him off in the city because he was more on the outskirts. He dropped him off in the city and said, "Figure it out, son." And so not only did he have the examples in his parents, the teachings of his mother, but he also had the real practical experience at a very early age on how to fend for yourself and how to develop, and learning how to fend for yourself is a great source of confidence, especially at an early age, because most people, like you said earlier, aren't in a situation where they have to go in, find work, and find a way to sustain themselves at an early age. And so that grounding gave him a lot of confidence. But he eventually found that bookkeeping job.
That was in Ohio, I believe.
Yep. Did it on a whim.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't even sure how much he was going to get paid. He was just like, "Look, man, I'm about to get some cash. I'm good. I'm locked in. Let's go." And he was excited. It ended up being something that paid him pretty adequately and fairly for some time. But he also took it very, very seriously.
Yeah, I believe, just doing some of the research on this, there was a story, I believe it was at this job, where he saw how much his bosses were getting paid. I don't know if you came into the same lore, but I believe it was he saw a check come into his boss for like $4,600. He was making like 50 cents a day. It was drastically large amount of money, and he knew the combination to the safe, and so he would come in after hours, open the safe, and hold the check in his hand and just think about what it would be like to have that in his name. And so there's a little bit of manifestation there. There's a little bit of just like understanding, okay, this is the goal I'm going to set for myself. And then just being ruthless about getting there.
Yeah, I don't know if I came across that, but that's really interesting. Being able to like pinpoint down that he was able to visualize and imagine himself in that space. And I think that's like a really powerful thing, because it sets you up to recognize when you're in that moment and continue to move forward, not get starstruck, but then also not fear the moment as well too.
Yeah, and also not be complacent with where he's at, right? He's got bigger ambitions. He's going to keep those ambitions fueled, by reminding us, okay, there's the goal. We're going to keep going until we get there. Yeah,
and as I continue to hear this as an experience of a lot of founders, Estee Lauder comes to mind when she talks about how her mother at a very early age told her that if she can imagine herself to be the most important person in any room, then eventually it'll follow suit. And you see how far she was able to take that piece of information and go with it. And I often find that a lot of people have been given similar information, but it's the ones that take the information and try to maximize it that end up getting the most out of it.
Most people, I think, have their filters on when they hear stuff like that. It falls into the woo-woo bucket.
Yeah, they're like, woo-woo, drop, woo-woo, drop.
So it's just like, I don't believe in that witchcraft or whatever. Like, you can't just think about things and they appear. But it's all about having to put your attention in the spot where it should be.
Well, it's exactly where you should be, and then it's also planning. Like, a manifest is a plan for a long journey. And if we look at our bodies as the vessel, then we have to steer it and get from one place to another. And being able to plan through the use of our visualization, through the use of our imagination, can be extremely powerful, and it can be extremely potent, because we're not just limited to paper and pen, we're limited by our imagination. And one notable characteristic of John D. Rockefeller is that he was a great planner.
Yes.
And he was somebody
meticulous
who planned,
planner.
very, very meticulous, very methodical. And I was reading it, I was like, this guy was like, he was a machine.
Yeah.
In the sense that he was just very disciplined, automatic, and he was just religious about that. And it's also extremely interesting because I think that his early experience was also grounded in reality too. So it wasn't just like he was lost by his imagination and captured by that, but it was also very grounded in the practical. Where I thought you were going to go with the story is that at his early bookkeeping job, he took it very, very seriously. There was one time when somebody came in and he saw them casually paying somebody else, and the person came in and he was I think the person was like, yeah, like this is what we're owed. And then one of the older gentlemen was like, hey, just get the money out of the safe and pay him. And he was like, whoa. It was like, no, we got to make sure that we're looking at what he's actually charging us for and make sure that everything is accounted for. And so he was just he was very meticulous and very by the books, and he was very aware of costs.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that was something that, like, again, is a through line throughout his whole career, is that being very meticulous to every detail and understanding the value in a transaction and not letting just transactions casually skate by, I think became his superpower. Because he often talked about that later. He was like, I understood business at a very early age because I had to go out there and keep the books for a business. I watched what was transacting here and I understood the importance of it. It's not complicated. It's very simple, but giving importance to simple things, especially at a young age, is what's a huge distinction.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that was, and that was in Ohio too, which at the time I know wasn't huge in terms of oil, but was getting there in terms of being discovered as like a big oil field in that area. And I think that's where he went next, but I don't know if he wanted to transition that. So I think, I believe it was in his 30s, or maybe it was around there, he actually got a job working in oil. I don't want to say oil fields because at the time it was crude oil. The whole goal of the oil, I guess, company at that time was to make kerosene, which was basically you would add a really simple ingredient to oil, it would purify it, and you could burn it as kerosene in a lamp, which most people were spending enormous amounts of monies, to buy like whale fat that you would, put in your lantern, and that's how you have light. Obviously, light changes all of human existence. If you have light, you no longer are bound by the sun to do what you need to do.
Yeah, we literally like flipped. Imagine that. We flip a switch right now, and it's not even a second thought.
No.
And back then, it was, we have to go and get the whale fat so that way we can
work after hours.
Yeah,
like that's wild.
And do that. And I remember even when I was really young, I took a couple trips to Uganda, and the power grid is not what it is over here in America.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So when the lights go out, it's like, okay, where are the kerosene lamps?
Yeah.
And that was just, even to this day, it's like that was the way that people lit up their homes when power went out. And so back then, that was just the way that you did it after hours. But yeah, man, it's incredible. This was in his 20s too. Was it 20s? Yeah, it was his 20s. By the time he was in his 30s, he was already
Standard Oil.
Yeah, and booming. Yeah.
Yes, it's just interesting how you kind of. I do know that during this period of time where he was getting his first couple of oil wells dug, they did find the formula to make the kerosene, and they had it as a very closely guarded secret because it was a very simple chemical reaction. I think it was only like one element you had to add, silicone or something like that, where you would add it and it would purify everything. And because it was so simple, he used to be very meticulous about who knew the secret and who was allowed to know the secrets.
Yeah.
Because that was what a lot of his company was built on, was the fact that he could produce this stuff.
Yeah, he was a big person of secrets. So the first person that made me think of was Estee Lauder, and how she was very, very
Sure.
scrupulous in terms of making sure that the secret was always protected. Nobody had all the parts of the secret. And that was more in, you know, the 80s, the 1900s, I would say, the 1980s. And we have to distinguish that because
we're talking 1880s.
Yeah. But so I've just been reading about his mindset, and he's somebody who very much looked at war, business like war.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do believe I saw a lot of that same mentality.
Yeah, and he's a guy that really prized secrecy, really prized moving in silence.
Everything you would have on a battlefield, really.
Everything that you have in battlefield. He said, like, you don't see people going out and parading around all of their secrets on a battlefield. Why should we do so in business? And so he used to have codes. He used to have transmit a lot of information in codes, and so that aligns so much with what you're talking about in terms of keeping the simple formula guarded and protected, because that's their business advantage.
Yeah. Did you come across any research with him overselling his oil fields to a certain railroad magnate?
JP Morgan.
Was it that or Vanderbilt?
No, so there was Vanderbilt, but then later so Morgan, I saw that he sold, I confused that. He sold a business to Morgan later in his life.
He did, actually. And a building too.
Yeah, for a lot too. It was like 50 mil. He made like a $50 million profit back then.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to hear some of these guys interact back then. But the Vanderbilt one, I think I saw, but I don't know.
From what I remember, he had a meeting with Vanderbilt, who was the richest person at the time, railroad, and we'll cover him in another episode.
Yeah.
But I believe he walked into the meeting and told him, hey, like, I can fill every single train car you have with my oil. And in reality, he only had about half of that capacity to be able to produce.
Yeah.
But he was able to negotiate, and this is something that I'll come across a couple of times in his career, where he is a master negotiator to instill that confidence that, no, like, if you go with me and we do this deal, we'll do it at this price, and at that price, I can guarantee you business for the next decade or so, right? Like, just giving that amount of confidence to go, yep, that's the person we need to do the deal with, and then he'll run off and say, okay, how do I actually make that deal happen on the back end?
Yeah, he had great business instincts. I think Charlie Munger said that Standard Oil was the best business, the best organization in American history, which is high esteem. But yeah, I think
it's these kinds of deals though that make it so that you can start merging and acquiring these other companies
and taking that next step. So one thing that I think it was Vanderbilt, where he said, "You come to me." He didn't go to him. It's pretty big, because I think he was established at this point.
Yes,
he was established at this point. But to say to somebody like Vanderbilt, the richest person in the country at that time, yeah, you come here. I'm not. If you want to make a deal, I'm not coming there. It's a big flex.
It is. Yeah, it's something where, like, this is where we start to see those dominoes kind of fall into place, where because he has such a strong negotiation skills, he's able to set up these deals, he's now able to put leverage on these other oil refineries in the region and in the country, where he's now able to blockade their entire production line, or he's able to just buy out all the train cars, so they can't ship them. Even if they were able to pull oil out of the ground, they can't actually get it anywhere.
Yeah, transportation, understanding the transportation networks,
the bottlenecks, and all that stuff
was a huge part. And we talk about meticulous, but meticulous really only comes to life when you look at planning outside of the happy path.
Right.
You're looking at all of the things that could go wrong. And I think that's the difference between strategic thinkers and non-strategic thinkers, is a good strategy accounts for what could go wrong and comes up with plan A, B, C, and D.
Right.
One thing that I often hear is people say, I'm not planning, I don't have a plan B. This is the plan A. And it's like, that's the dumbest thing ever. Like, that's the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah.
But I think to give it more context is you should have one mission and you should have multiple plans in service of that mission. And so if one thing goes wrong, you have a backup plan. You have a backup plan. And that's where strategic thinking comes into play, where you can hold multiple plans in your mind when you're trying to accomplish a goal or in service of a mission.
Yeah, I think the other thing that brought into my head was the founder that we covered that had the mindset of, well, let me figure out what's going to kill me, and then let's avoid that.
Yeah.
Do you remember who that founder was?
So we're
Pop
thinking
quiz in the middle.
We're thinking of inversion thinking.
Pop quiz in the middle of Founder's Drive.
Say, just because it's inverted thinking, I want to say Charlie Munger. But it's not him.
I believe,
because I remember we said this.
Yep.
We referenced Charlie Munger in the inverted thinking when we talked about this. Why don't you?
I don't actually have the idea of who it was, but we'll have to add it in there because this is how I feel like Rockefeller thought about his competition. How are they gonna die? And then I'll go there and cut their supply lines, or take the people that are trying to work for them, or do something in the way to mess up their business. You know, and that's what
he disrupted his business before. He disrupted his business before other people could disrupt his business, and it always seems like he was one step ahead because in his mindset he was one step ahead. He was trying to put himself out of business. Mentally.
I think he was also trying to put them out of business by doing
mentally first, and then it's like, okay, I can go and do this. What's so interesting is his timing is so interesting in the sense that he was also very good at getting consensus in his decision making and moving forward. I think he realized the value of doing that as much.
Yeah, there was a couple of very interesting stories. One in particular that was imprinted on me was how he controlled the room and being able to be calm when, you know, he had one of his colleagues yelling at him. The guy was yelling at him for probably a good 5 minutes. This is never going to work. This is going wrong. Everything X, Y, and Z. And John just looked at him and was like, sorry, I missed what you were saying. Could you repeat that? And they're the only two people in the room. The guy's been yelling for the last 5 minutes. It's like, all right, we need to reset. And he's just like, okay, I'm going to control the conversation because you might have good points, but I'm going to control the conversation.
Yeah, he very disciplined. They say that he never yelled. He never lost his temper. Although, I mean, just looking at the way that he conducts himself, the guy is probably next level. I don't want to put any specific terms out there, but but he is somebody that I think he just had a lot of restraint. And I don't think that he just didn't feel the feels. I think he was very well aware of that, but he just knew how that stuff could affect his business dealings and his relationships. And so
so we're in the spot now where he's got kind of the start of Standard Oil, working with Vanderbilt, having secret deals with those railroads allows him to squeeze out competitors. And through a couple of different business tactics, he's able to start acquiring different oil refineries and starting to merge these companies together into, I guess, under his umbrella. There's a lot in this area where it's
there's a couple of things that I want to throw on the table right now that I found that I think might add some more context.
Go for it.
One of them is he started as a bookkeeper in his teens, and that's really important because early on in his career he borrowed a lot of money, and he was not against borrowing a lot of money.
That's true.
He borrowed from his father, he borrowed from the bank, he borrowed from his mentors, he borrowed from everybody. And he just understood the value and the cost of money, and he had big goals really early on, and he wasn't going to let anything get in the way of that. And so I think there was somebody who coined him the great borrower, just because he borrowed so much money up front, and he just knew the value of that. So that's a big thing in terms of when he's going about and buying businesses, when he's expanding, that's a huge thing. Another thing is that, and you mentioned this earlier, is that the oil industry was not as advanced as it is today.
Correct.
A lot of times people cut corners, and they didn't invest all the way. For instance, in their where they were drilling, they had like just wooden like huts around the stuff, just because they were like, we don't want to invest too much in that.
Right.
And so what he was very meticulous on was just doing things the right way and implementing things at a very high standard. And so when he was going about and buying different oil refineries and different businesses, he was looking at ones that weren't conducting themselves to the standard that they could be, going in there and then implementing it and implementing his standard,
Yes.
And then bring them in the fold. And so, yeah, that's just a big thing to consider when we look at the expansion of
Standard Oil.
Yeah, and
yeah, it wasn't even like, I think it was also that, along with like the fact that you could like
to anchor. This is around 1870 when he started.
Right, right. And I think like understanding that, okay, these guys aren't investing what they should be doing, also allows me to pick out where can I bleed them dry. And he used to do that, where he would put these companies in situations where they would really have no other choice but to sell to him. Right? And so there's a idea here of, instead of just demolishing, because he could just keep pushing, and eventually they would close their doors and they would walk away. Instead, something that I think is a little bit, I guess, new for the time, that has adapted, you know, for the next 100 years, is I'm going to acquire you. I'm not going to let you guys close your doors and just be, oh, I'm going to find a job somewhere else, or I'm going to go do something else. You're going to come work for me. And so being able to acquire these companies and therefore acquire the talent that was working there, I think is just huge. I mean, then you have a consolidation of all the smartest people in your industry under your umbrella. That's how now you can start making big moves, just with the right people. Yeah, you know, because you can't do everything.
No, that's a really important point to bring up. Is you can see the track record of this specifically with how he started with the deals. He gave them stock in the Standard Oil Company.
Yes.
And then if they chose to say, like, I don't want to do that, then he would like give them cash. But that was never the best option, because we see what Standard Oil became, and towards like the later part, they paid themselves handsome dividends. Like they put that stuff out there. So so this happened pretty early on in the company's lifetime too.
I mean, it was an explosive growth, like kind of stuff you'd see unicorn status of today.
Yeah, they did it a lot through debt financing.
Yep.
And one of his guys, Henry, I think it's Lagler, was one of his early partners, and they went to town and they grew the business, and they were aggressive and growing, and they knew what they were doing. Like they knew what they were setting out and doing.
I believe he had to drop him as a business partner because Henry was too comfortable with the success that he had.
Was that him?
I believe it was either him or a business partner before, where Rockefeller was like, dude, I want to go bigger. Like, we're doing great, but I want to go bigger.
I think that might have been the person before.
Was it?
And then Henry Lagler was the guy that they ran with.
To actually like take it to the national stage. I mean, at this time, we were talking about a time in the U.S. where like we had laws where you couldn't operate a company across state lines.
Yeah, like you can invest in a company across state lines too. That was a big thing early on. Yeah.
And so now Rockefeller is, okay, now I'm doing good business. I have these deals with the railroad. I'm acquiring all these other oil refineries. Now, how do I actually implement this with the laws in place today in his time to operate at a national scale? To really, because that's how I think you get to that $1 billion scale, is you start operating across state lines.
Yeah. That's intriguing. There's the rule thing that you brought up is really interesting. But I just want to slide in a couple different pieces of information here too. One is that he did have a couple businesses before. One was with a guy, I think it was like Clark and Rockefeller or something like that, where they weren't in the oil business early on. They were trading other types of commodities, and they had some profit there. And then I think the Standard Oil was started with other people first, and then he bought the shares from those people, and then he went and found Lagler, and they took it to wherever they did. But I could be spotty on there.
That's an interesting though. I didn't actually think about how do you get into the oil fields? Like how do you get into that?
How was this whole thing going there? And so there's some stuff that we'll fill in as we go through this whole founders drive. We're just researching, and we're open sourcing the research. All right, so back off, y'all. Back off.
He's anticipating. He's anticipating it.
But yeah, so that's just like, it's really intriguing thinking about that, and then how they ended up going beyond that. we left off on their mergers and acquisitions and how that went about. It reminds me somewhat of Robert Smith, our private equity,
taking them and then transforming the businesses that he has.
Yeah, and just introducing, these different methods and improving the standard that they conduct themselves, especially when you see a business that has a good philosophy, but the standards and the execution just aren't where they should be given what they could be.
Right.
And the resources and information. And so that's somebody that comes to mind, taking that same playbook. But doing this back in the 1800s, it's like, where do you get some of these ideas? But
that's true.
One thing is that I look at how he viewed the rules, and I think it's important to understand that rules are there to enforce behavior.
They're supposed to be, yeah.
But I also think that it's important for entrepreneurs to understand that rules are formed given the information they have at the time. And so as time passes, contexts change. And so going back and examining the rules and then seeing, one, where you can fit in, but then two, how you might be able to introduce an update to the rules, can go a long way. Games change, games adapt, and that's an important thing to understand too, is that it's not like saying, hey, rules are flexible and bend them and break them, without thought, but examining and knowing can go a long way.
I think you can't be successful as an entrepreneur unless you believe the rules are bendable. I feel like it's so hard to operate if you are like, no, I do everything by the book. Everything has to be above board. Like, I agree. Like, all the major stuff, yes, but like, there's always going to be something where it's like, I'm going to bend this rule just a little bit, right? I feel like every business does that in some way, shape, or form.
Yes,
to get some kind of competitive advantage. So not like federally felonies. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that's where I'm sensing that you're coming from, right? So just to add more context in here, so people don't take this. But so yes, I think that we have to know the rules and know the history of the rules and why they exist, and not blindly follow them. And I think that can come off as, hey, we're bending the rule. But I think largely when you look at some rules, you're like, this doesn't even make sense. And it was made for a specific circumstance, or it's just outdated. Times have changed. And I think looking at that, being able to examine that and say, okay, it might not even apply here. Most people might think it applies, but they actually haven't looked at the rule and they haven't looked at the context of it. And so they say, okay, I have my blinders up, I'm just going to straight follow it. But if you actually examine it closely, you see that there's more to it. There's more flexibility here in terms of how I can move. And so I almost look at the rule as, okay, rule is more flexible, but I can bend around it. The rule doesn't bend.
That's interesting, because so I guess my just little context disclaimer that I should add here is that the perception that I'm thinking about this is not necessarily rule of law.
Right.
I'm thinking about the rule in terms of, hey, if you're trying to break into an industry and there's an incumbent in that industry who is the majority shareholder, they are setting the rules for that industry. They're setting the rules for how customers engage with that product or that service. They're setting the rules for how business should be done in that vertical. And I'm like, nah, I can do things way differently, still be legal, but we're going to change the rules and give customers either a better experience. We're going to be able to be more efficient with whatever processes we're doing, because I'm not going to hold myself to the rules that some other organization might be saying, oh, these are the standards that we have. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not talking legally. There's different legal ramifications there, but in my point of view, it's just like the rules of the game are almost always set by the winners of the previous game. And so if you're trying to win in that game, you're playing by somebody else's rules, you might want to look at bending those rules. But
yes, but I also think that you can extend it. Not outright breaking the law, but I think
that's why I want to be careful.
But I think you can extend it to the law, because I think that a lot of laws are in place because people said that these should be rules, that this is how we should conduct our behavior. And I say this with the backing of, there's plenty of laws out there that harm people that were put in place because of motivated interests that just had power at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And so sometimes it's important to look and say, okay, why is this here? And if it's a problem, there are methods and ways to go and bend it or change it.
Right.
The avenues to get around a rule aren't always just go and break it and think you're above the law
and then ask for forgiveness. Yeah,
but
that's not what we're advocating.
But there are means to go and say, okay, I don't know if I don't know if I agree with this.
Right.
And I have, at least in America, I have the
good distinction,
right? The political capital of free speech, and I can go and mobilize people and go and change that. And so that gets into a different discussion of lobbying and everything like that. But I do think that laws are made by people, and knowing that it was other people that came to a decision and said, this is what's going to be in charge. It's like, okay, but it's not set in stone. And I think that's why business has its potential in America. It's because we've set the system in place to be able to examine things and grow over time and change, but
push the boundaries.
But a big part of it is being educated, and entrepreneurs, like, we do things inherently to prevent risk.
Yes.
And so sometimes when we're doing things, we realize, oh, I can't move here freely, I can't move there freely. It makes sense to go in and say, all right, what can we do to change the box that we're in, change the boundaries. So yeah, of course we're not advocating saying go and breaking rules, but what we're saying is learn the rules, understand the rules, understand the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've got two kind of stories here where I feel like it helps him and hurts him. And so I'm not sure if you want to transition any to later life, but I think this is pretty core to the Standard Oil stuff.
Yeah.
When he's doing his mergers and acquisitions, we talked about the fact that in the 1800s you couldn't operate across state lines. The first thing that he does in this kind of, I wouldn't say the first thing he does, but the first thing in the world that happens is a trust. The Standard Oil Trust, which essentially is a trust that allows him to operate a company across state lines, essentially, becoming a national company at the time. So that's going to get him a little bit in trouble later in life with some of the antitrust laws that are the first of their kind in America. And so that's one of those rules that he's able to stand up a trust and kind of get around that way. Now, that's where it benefits him. There's another story here where it hurt him, where he was doing his mergers and acquisitions, and I think his name's Charles Fisk or something like that, decided, okay, I'm going to sell Rockefeller my company. But because he needs, and Rockefeller was well known for what you would consider today as hostile takeovers, being able to essentially buy up shares of a company to the point where you have a majority shareholding, and then you can then make decisions because you own enough shares. You can then make decisions for the company. Fisk decided, okay, we know Rockefeller is going to be buying all my stuff. I'm going to go print more stocks, and he was able to do that because of one of the bylaws in their charter, where I think it was the Erie company decided, okay, we don't have to let any shareholders know that we're printing more stocks, but we can go print more stocks. And so because of that loophole, they were printing stocks faster than he could buy them. And so Rockefeller had to buy more stocks to get that 51%, but he could never really get there. And he ended up doing it, but ended up spending just enormous amounts of money to do that. And so these guys ended up with a huge bag that they weren't supposed to get just because of the way that people hadn't even thought of, I'm going to water down my own stock.
Yeah, he just diluted the shares just to stop him from being able to take over the company.
Which Rockefeller ended up winning, but he wasn't, he had to spend a lot of money to do that.
Gotcha.
And so,
That's, maybe we can pin it here and then go into super
We probably
secret.
Can. I do want to get into the antitrust stuff.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So let's get into that. But one thing that, the note that I'll leave it on is that reminds me a little bit of Blitzscaling.
Yes.
And how many times there's many instances of Rockefeller abandoning tradition and the rule set of how you should conduct business to gain a business advantage. That's one of them where it didn't necessarily go as planned, but he was like, I'm willing to just spend until we get this company because I believe that we can make up for this down the road. Another instance is when he was what was it? He was selling. Shoot,
It's curious.
Like, yeah, just about my kid.
It's curious because what you said is like, I'm gonna spend money and I'm gonna plant my flag here, and this is what we're gonna. It reminded me of Meta. They spent $10 billion on the metaverse. Now it didn't exactly work out for them yet.
Yeah.
But Zuckerberg's like, yo, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Because I'm betting on the future. I think this is where things are going.
Yeah, that was in their books too. It's like they were making $100 billion, like almost.
People don't realize that.
Yeah, and so they said $10 billion here. It's a big number, so it sounds. It sounds, ludicrous to the most people, but it was something that they overspent. He overspent on at the time.
Technically, he
on
overspent
Instagram.
Right.
And you look back, you're like, oh my God, it made so much sense.
I would have paid that,
yeah. WhatsApp, he spent $17.9 billion to acquire, or maybe $19 billion, but you look back on it and you're like, oh, it makes so much sense. It's when you have a good internal sense of value, it becomes a lot easier to make decisions that look crazy to other people, but make so much sense when you look in the rear view mirror.
Yes, 100%. There is another story of that with Rockefeller where later in life he starts getting a little, combative with Carnegie, who is U.S. Steel.
Yeah.
Where Rockefeller actually ended up buying the largest iron mine in the United States, and was like, listen, like, I know you need this, but I own this. And so he ended up having to do a deal with Carnegie where Carnegie was saying, okay, I'm going to buy iron off of you to supplement my trains that are going out to produce steel. And so, even just understanding that, I have my vertical in oil, but there is all these other players that are billionaires in America now that I can start doing business with. It kind of reminds me of the Meta, we can go to Instagram and grab that, WhatsApp and grab that, because we know that it's going to be cohesive.
Yeah. So, I mean, Rockefeller is one of those people that there was a lot of times where it might not look like it makes sense, but when you look at the other end of it, it does make sense, and it does put the business in a better position. And I think that largely comes down to him just being very disciplined in terms of knowing his value and knowing when you can do things that don't necessarily make sense in the moment by convention, but in the long run they make sense. And it stinks because I can't remember that other example right now. It's like on the tip of my tongue.
We'll probably get into it in super secret.
Yeah, we'll probably
get into it. So if you guys are looking for this information,
yes, please
hop in super secret.
Jump in there, and we'll talk a little bit more about Rockefeller, and we'll talk a little bit more about antitrust.
Yep, and how he may have
more about
operated in today.
Yes.
Check us out on Constance. Check the link in the description below, and check us out next week for another founder on Founders Drive.
Let's do it.
Peace.